Hello everyone. Okay, so today I would like to show you how I achieved this on the top of these gorgeous little black tins that you can get from tinypandora.com. They are wonderful. They're only about 4 inches across and they're just such a unique little size. Great if you wanted to give it to a man as a gift. You could put cufflinks in it or make it pretty and give it to a girl. Today I want to do this steampunk theme that obviously could be done for both. So let's make a start. Okay, so first of all I just want to make sure that the piece of clay I've got, and this is just black Primo clay, will actually fit the top of my tin. And I think we can all see that that will. And next what I want to do is I want to put the texture on here. So I have got the lovely letters stamp. You can also get this from tinypandora.com. I absolutely adore this stamp. And for something like this, like the steampunk sort of look, I think it really just lends itself to it. So I'm just going to actually stick mine on top like so. Some people do it the other way. I just find that I can get a better impression this way. But I'm just literally going to make sure that's down, and it doesn't have to be too perfect because it is steampunk and it has a sort of, I don't know, perfect imperfectly whatever, something like that anyway. But I just feel that it just needs to have a sort of slightly almost ruggedy type look, I suppose. But you can always check to make sure what the impression is like. And I've got my clay just sat on some baking sheet. It's like a silicone baking sheet. I just find it a bit easier and it doesn't seem to doesn't stick to my surface, which is great. So I'm just going to keep pushing this down. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you use a roller over the top because sometimes that can move the letter in it and make it, give it like a sort of like a double image. Doesn't come out too well. But taking in mind that a lot of this will be actually covered with bits and pieces that I'll adhere to it, then if bits aren't too indented, don't worry. So I think that will be fine. Okay, so just move that out of the way, and then I'm just going to take my lid and I'm just going to make sure, let's first of all just get rid of that little gremlin. There's always one, isn't there? There we go. I'm just going to make sure that that's going to fit fine, and I think it will. I'll just double check that I can get the edges in. Like I say, I'm not too worried quite so much about the edges, but just try and get as much as you can in there because it all adds to its charm. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint some glue onto my tin top, and I'm just going to use some Weld Bond. So while I do that, and this is just normal Weld Bond, you can get it all sorts of ways. I find this the best. I don't believe if you was to use like a liquid clay that it would actually work as well. I don't even know if it'd work, to be honest, but I just find that this glue works the best for me. So I'm going to crack on with that. I'll put you on pause because you really don't want to see this. It's a bit like watching paint dry, and I shall see you in a moment. Okay, so all I did here was I've obviously covered it all on the top of the tin with the glue, and now I've actually placed my piece, and you will see that sometimes you're going to get some little air bubbles. The easiest way to get rid of these is to just slowly work them out, basically out of the piece, and then the excess I literally just cut off with my scissors. But you can see you've got that nice little lip. Whereas the other one I did, I actually covered most of that. I'm actually going to cut this in, so it is just a case of running your blade around that edge and just making that as neat as you want it to be. It doesn't take too much to do, but it's just a case of just gently making sure that you're going to keep it into that edge, and then you'll have a nice finish. You can just keep putting your sides down. We can clear up any little pieces that we miss as we go along. pulling it off. Of course you can have it go over the edge if you want to. Just be mindful of something that if it's going to be taken off and on, make sure it is properly adhered. But the Weld Bond works very well, and obviously it can be baked. So just going to make sure that's in that little bit there. It's just a case of tidying up these little edges. And then it's just a case of really walking your fingers around and just making sure that that is down as much as it can go, so we don't get anything sticking up. And once that's done, then it's a case of decoration. I have here some pan pastels, and I've gone for sort of like the gold and the bronzes and the silver, but obviously use whichever colour you prefer, colours you prefer. I've also got a little bit of blue, and this is the Christy Freeze, and this is the Tie Pool. And I've also got this one, I think it's called Diath, or the name is actually faded on it so I can't actually see it, but it's like a black. And the reason why I've chosen that, which you might think is a bit odd, is because I've actually done my little pieces excuse me, ready to do, and each of these I will need to put some kind of liquid clay on the back just to really help them stick, because once I've covered this with the mica powder, it won't have the surface for this to adhere to, so I do need to put something on the back of these. But I've done them in slightly different colours. I've used just a bit of gold, antique gold Primo, and so with these lighter ones I will probably use some of this, and I may even put a little bit of blue on top of it. But those pieces I've got ready. These are the moulds I used. I have no idea where I got these from, probably eBay, but they're just some sort of like steampunk type theme. But you can use anything you like, it doesn't obviously have to be steampunk, but it's just nice to get something a little bit different. So I will start by just moving these to one side, I think, and I'm just going to start by covering this. Now you can do this anyway. You can use a brush if you want to, or you can use your fingers. I'm probably going to use my fingers, and I'm going to start with this wonderful gold, and I'm just going to lightly brush this on because we're going to build up the colours. You don't need to necessarily have it all the same colour or all one colour, but that's entirely up to you. But I'm just going to build these up and slowly build in the colours that I want, just to give it the effect that I'm looking for. And this is really simple to do, but I'm just going to keep going ahead and adding my colours, and I will be back shortly. Okay, so as you can see, I've actually put a couple of pieces on there already, and I've actually used just the TLS for this, and I'm just going to make sure they are stuck down. And it's just a case of randomly putting the pieces where you want, really. You can make a pattern if you want to. It really doesn't matter. It's just, there's no real, you know, you must do it this way or you must do it that way. It's really where you feel comfortable putting the pieces. So I'm just going to carry on, and this is literally all I did, was I just dipped my finger in it a little bit, made sure I got enough on the piece, and then just flip it over and decide which way I want it and where I want to put it, really. And that's it. And then I just start to build it up, and then obviously I will apply some colour to the top. So I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I've finished adhering my pieces onto here, and I have really just put them really quite randomly. I did put sort of one on top of each other just to give it a little bit of depth. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour these pieces. Now you can do this however you wish. I find that using a brush on this part is a little bit easier than trying to use my fingers. So I've got a couple of brushes here, really small one for finer detail, and one that's got a nice little pad on the end, and I can show you what I do with that. But both of these I got from tinypandora.com, and they are the Goldilocks brushes, and I wouldn't be without them. So I'm going to start with just doing some of the actual really dark colour, and I can just show you what it does on the golder, or the gold Primo, just so as you can see how it just picks up. And I'm just going to apply it quite gently to it, and it just gives it a tinge. It doesn't really, I mean obviously the more you put on the darker it would be, but I just wanted to have a slightly different look with some of these little cogs on here, just to give it a little bit more interest. But you can put as much as you like or as little as you like. But I will say that using these brushes really does help. And I will go over the top with something else just to give it a bit of highlight. But you can see the difference now. It's a slightly lighter look, and the rest of them I'm just going to use this brush probably, apart from the little bits. But it really just depends. I'm going to probably do some of these coppery type tones. And you don't have to do all the same colour on one thing, just make sure you get around the edges. You don't have to do it all over like so. I might go for a slightly darker, just to bring out another piece of the edge. And it's just really about building up your colours. I like the pan pastels because you can blend them quite well together. But I might even go for a bit of silver. Just have yourself a bit of paper towel just so as you can wipe the excess off. And just have a little bit of a silver one on the edge there. So I'm just going to colour these in, and I will be using a bit of blue because anyone that knows me knows I love blue and I can't live without my blue. I'm just going to bring this gold down here. It's really just as to what you like. You don't have to use these sort of colours at all. You can do something totally different. It's just blending it in. So I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I covered most of my pieces, and well, I've covered them all, but what I wanted to show you, what I use the other end for, is just to give each one a bit of a highlight if I want to. So I just literally dab this, and I can just take a little bit on a corner piece, say, just to give it a little bit of a highlight. Maybe put some in the middle of this one. And you might not be able to see that too well on camera, but believe me, it does make a difference to your piece, and it just adds a little bit more depth. And once you've sort of completed your piece as far as your colouring, just go round all the edges, just make sure that you've got everywhere so it doesn't look like it is necessarily just a piece stuck onto something. You can always use your brush to get in those little edges. Just really just finishes it all off. But you can do these in all sorts of colours. If you can get like the holographic type, I think they use them for nails. It's like a mica and it almost has a two-tone effect. If you can get those, then they are wonderful. Purples and blues and everything else. So it's really just dependent on what sort of colour you're looking at. But I do like these sort of coppery goldy tones, and I just had to put that little bit of blue in there. So all you need to do now is bake your piece. Now there is some quite thick elements on here, and always remember to put the lids back on your mica powders. You don't really want those to end up all over the floor. Yes, there's some quite thick pieces on here, so I will bake mine in the oven for at least an hour. And then once we're done, once it's baked, I'm also going to actually add some of the tiny Pandora Matte, and this just helps to seal your mica powder, because the last thing you want is for this to be rubbing off on your hands, and it will do, although a lot of it will bake on, but it will start to do that. So we will be back shortly after it's baked. Okay, so this is now out of the oven and ready to have a coat of the tiny Pandora Matte Shine. And what I'm going to do, it's still slightly warm, not very warm, but slightly warm, obviously okay to touch, and that doesn't matter when you're applying this. You really do only need a small amount, but I just want to coat it so that you don't get the rubbing off on your fingers or when you touch it, just to protect it. So I'm just going to take a coat, run this over the top, and it will sort of like, almost looks like it's got foam in it or something, like a sort of bubble or something, almost like you've got dish soap in it. You haven't, it's just the way it goes. But I'm just going to put a coat on, and then what I will do is I will dab at it at the end and just take any excess off. But this just allows to make sure that I can take the top off and on without too much problem with it, well, without any of the mica powder rubbing off. So just going to make sure that's well coated, and once I've coated it, I'm actually going to put it back in the oven, and that actually helps to seal it and also helps to turn it a little bit more matte. You probably won't notice the matte so much because obviously the mica has got its own sort of shine to it, so you probably won't see that. But what I like is that it doesn't look as if it's got anything on it, so it's a varnish that really doesn't sort of stand out too much, so it is great if you've got product on your piece. And so I just have a paper towel here ready, and I just take the excess off, and then I just go round and make sure I'm just getting it out of all the little crevices, and that in turn enables me to just make sure I've definitely got it all sealed. You just need to keep dabbing your brush and just making sure that it doesn't bubble up anywhere. But it's a really good varnish, like I say, especially for things like this, because it's not moved any of the mica around, so we've not had a problem there. It's not like it's taking it off or it's smudging it in any way. Obviously baking with some mica powder on, or the pan pastels, you are embedding, when you push anything into the clay, you are embedding it a bit, so that will stay there. But it is nice to know that you can put your colours on and then you can seal them, and they'll last an awful long time. So all I'm going to do now is just pop this back into the oven for about 15 minutes at the same temperature, and I shall see you again shortly. Okay, so all finished out of the oven, and there we go. I do love them. I'm really quite pleased with these, and I think these tins are just so fun because you can do so much with them. You can even do the edge if you wanted to. I think the fact that they're black, they're fine as they are, but I absolutely love them. So tins from tinypandora.com, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall see you again soon. Thank you.